Good evening. I have another Brothers Grimm story for all of you, and tonight I am determined. This marshmallow is not going to drop into the fire. I'm going to toast it. I'm going to eat it properly. Uh, you know, Embarrassing to say I've actually been practicing because it's really not a bit. I'm really not doing this for laughs. It's a lot harder than you'd think to toast a marshmallow and tell a story and pay attention to the camera and try to be moderately entertaining all at the same time. So, I appreciate those of you who have stuck it out with me. And it's been fun to hear from fellow slow toasters because, as many of you have commented, it takes a lot more patience to slow toast a marshmallow, but I think it's really worth it. Anyway, the story that I have for you tonight is another one from the very first round of Brothers Grimm stories, but they published their stories in two volumes. The first one came out in 1812, and the second volume came out in 1815. This is a story that I first read in the Tasha Tudor book of fairy tales. That's one that just is absolutely stamped on my memory as a child. The illustrations in it are so beautiful. And it's commonly translated into English as the 12 Dancing Princesses. But the original story, the German title, is actually more closely translated as The Shoes That Were Danced to Pieces, or perhaps The Shoes That Were Danced into Bits. And I really like this one because it very much taps into the desire that kids have, especially teenagers, to be able to sneak out of the house and do what they want and not get caught and to be able to get away with it. And in the end, they do get busted, but, you kind of feel like they had their fun while it lasted. So this is The Shoes That Were Danced to Pieces. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 12 daughters. I read this story to my youngest child earlier, and she said, "Wait, what?" And I said, "Yeah, 12 daughters." And she goes, "That's more than I have fingers." And I don't know why, it just made me laugh. But it's true, that's a lot of daughters. Each one was more beautiful than the next. They kept their beds together in one great room. Every night, when it was time for them to sleep, the door was closed and the bolt was locked. And yet every morning their shoes were completely worn out. Nobody could discover where the king's daughters had been or how they managed to destroy their shoes. Now, my husband had a really good point when I was reading this story to the family, and he was like, just stop buying them shoes. And I kind of went, yeah, fair point. Like, yeah, king, why? Why do you keep buying these girls' shoes? You should just be like, sorry, you've worn out your shoes. I'm not buying you anymore till like next month or whatever. The king made a proclamation that any man who could discover where they were going to dance at night could choose one of them for a wife and be king after his death. But whoever put himself forward and could not solve the mystery after 3 days and nights would lose his life. Soon a prince arrived and was received with great honor. In the evening, he was led to the room outside the 12 daughters' bedroom. There stood a bed for him to rest in, and there he was to stay to try to figure out where they went to dance. So they couldn't hide what they were up to or sneak out somewhere. The door to the bedroom was left open. The king's son fell asleep, and when he awoke in the morning, the 12 had been somewhere to go dancing, for their shoes were heaped on the floor with holes in the soles. The second and third evenings went the same way. Then the young man's head was struck off. Seems pretty harsh, but then, again, he did volunteer for it. So I guess in the Middle Ages, that's just what happens when you lose a game show. Play silly games, win silly prizes. And so many more came to report for duty in this daring deed, but they all lost their lives. Now it happened that a poor soldier who had a wound and could no longer serve in the army was walking toward the city where the king lived. He crossed paths with an old woman who asked him where he was going. I found this part interesting because, as I mentioned before, this story was published in 1815. This is the year that the Napoleonic Wars came to an end. And this is after, Napoleon had tried to take over the known world. And, oh, you know what? Before I get lost on a political and historical tangent, it would appear that my marshmallow is nice and toasty and ready. And to celebrate, I have something extra special. Now, one thing that I really miss, since I'm obviously an American, but I live in England, I cannot get my hands on Girl Scout cookies. But a very good friend of mine back in Los Angeles, dude, you're the best. He sent me 2 boxes of Thin Mints, and it cost him like $27. So that is true friendship. And to celebrate, I am going to be having my unruined marshmallow, my perfectly toasted on the outside, perfectly gooey on the inside marshmallow, on top of a delicious Thin Mint. I sold a lot of boxes of Thin Mints back in the day, and you just cannot go wrong with this cookie on a s'more. I know that the graham cracker is most classic, but it's good to mix it up once in a while. Of course, now the problem is that my teeth are going to be full of chocolate, aren't they? I'll be right back, because I've made my hands completely sticky. And I know my teeth are full of chocolate. Now, I have a confession to make. Because of my 2 out of 3 failures on toasting marshmallows while trying to talk to all of you, I recruited my husband to come and sit behind the camera here. And just as the marshmallows started to sag a bit, he leaned over and was like, so all due credit to my husband. Thank you. Maybe I need to get him a t-shirt that says Marshmallow Warden so that, he can be rewarded for his efforts. So what I was just getting into is, so this poor soldier, and the word is poor as in impoverished, not like, oh, poor soldier. He has a wound and could no longer serve in the army. So this being 1815, the Napoleonic Wars have just come to an end, and hundreds of thousands of men would have been walking around like this at the time. They've all been demobilized, and they don't really have anywhere to go or anything to do. They've left their homes, maybe they're injured. They're probably dealing with all kinds of, mental fallout, nightmares, bad memories from the things that they've seen. And so the sight of a soldier wandering around with a wound, nowhere to go, no job, that would have been really common. And this would have been an image that would have struck readers in 1815 very much. Just like, yeah, oh, I know someone like that. Like that's my brother, that's my cousin, that's my friend, my neighbor. So keep that in mind as this guy uses his wits to improve his lot in life and come out on top, because these were guys who, for the most part, sometimes they didn't have a lot of career options, and they were going to be dealing with the fallout from these wars for the rest of their lives. So the old woman asks him, where are you going? I don't rightly know myself, he said. But I would like very much to become king and find out where the king's daughters have been dancing their shoes to bits. Aye, said the old woman. That's not so tricky. I was curious about this expression. It's written just E-I, aye. And so I asked on X if there were any native German speakers who could help me out. And I had a wonderful answer from Heinz in June, who he's very lucky. He lives in the Siebengebirge, which is an absolutely stunning part of Germany that, gosh, would I love to visit one day. And he said that it's mostly akin to, oh, or why, as in, why isn't that lovely? Nowadays, its use is mostly confined to certain East German dialects. A friend of mine is from Saxony and uses it all the time. This story was collected by the Brothers Grimm in what is today the northern central part of Germany. So that's interesting to me because it shows that this expression used to be in wider use, and then it's sort of shrunk down to this more eastern area. So maybe this is an expression that Germans could bring back and sound a little old-timey when you're talking. When one of them brings you wine in the evening, you must not drink it. Then you must pretend to fall fast asleep. Then the old woman gave him a short cloak and said, if you put this around your neck, you will be able to sneak after the 12, unseen. On hearing this good advice, the soldier turned his joke into a serious plan. He plucked up his courage, went before the king, and declared himself ready for the challenge. He was received as warmly as all the others, and was richly dressed in royal clothes. In the evening at bedtime, he was led to the room outside the hall where the princesses slept. When he was ready for bed, the oldest sister came and brought him a cup of wine. But he secretly poured it out before lying down. In later editions of this story, the Brothers Grimm revise it so that he ties a sponge under his chin, and then he pours the wine and makes it look like he's drinking it, but it dribbles down his chin and into the sponge. Not sure why they added that. Maybe they wanted to show that this soldier is even more clever and, even better at getting the better of these sisters than he was before. After a while, he began to snore as if in a deep sleep. The 12 princesses heard this and laughed. The oldest sister scoffed. He was too foolish to save his own life. After that, the sisters got up and opened cupboards, chests, and boxes. They took out splendid clothes, adorned themselves in front of their mirrors, jumped around, and became giddy with delight as they thought of the night of dancing that was ahead of them. It's a pretty good description of girls getting ready for the prom. Yet the youngest said, "I don't know. You're all so happy, but I feel out of sorts. I think our luck is about to run out." "You silly goose," said the eldest. The original German uses the word Schneegans, or snow goose. The closest translation is silly goose, and as far as I can tell, this isn't an insult that's used anymore, but it seems like such a fun thing to say, so maybe that's another insult we can bring back. Start calling people a Schneegans. "You are afraid of everything. Don't you remember how many princes have tried and failed? I didn't even need to give that soldier a sleeping potion. He's not waking up no matter what happens." When the sisters were finished getting ready, they checked on the soldier. But he didn't move a muscle. So now they thought they were quite safe. The oldest sister went to her bed and knocked on it. Right away, it sank into the ground and a trap door opened. The soldier saw them going down, one after the other, with the eldest in front. There was no time to lose. He rose up, put on his cloak, and went down behind the youngest sister. Halfway down the stairs, he stepped on the hem of the youngest sister's dress, which, I'm sorry, I know before I said that I thought it was extreme that they were cutting these guys' head off, but you step on a girl's prom dress, decapitation is like the best case scenario. She was startled and cried out, "Something isn't right. Something is holding my gown." "Don't be a simpleton," the oldest sister said. "You've just caught on a hook." The sisters went down, and when they had reached the bottom, they stood in a magnificent lane of trees, which were all made of silver, that glittered and shimmered. The soldier thought that he ought to take a token with him for proof, so he broke off a twig, and a tremendous crack came from the tree. The youngest sister cried out, "Something isn't right. Did you hear that bang? That's never happened before." But the oldest sister just replied, "It's celebratory shots because the princes are so happy that we're on our way." Next they came to a lane of trees where all the leaves were made of gold, and finally to a third where they were all made of clear diamonds. Each time the soldier broke off a twig, and each time the youngest started in terror, but the oldest told her it was only a gunfire salute. They reached a large lake on which waited 12 little boats. In each boat sat a handsome prince. They had been waiting to receive each one of the 12 sisters. The soldier sat down in the boat with the youngest sister. The prince said, "I'm as strong as always, but today the boat feels so much heavier, and I have to row with all my might." Okay, just a tip. If you are picking up your date and you're traveling by rowboat, don't comment that the boat feels heavier than usual. Just a bit of friendly advice. Just don't say it. Even if it's true, just row the boat. "Perhaps it's the warm weather," said the youngest sister. "I feel rather hot myself." Good deflection on her part. At the far side of the lake was a beautiful, brightly lit castle, and within sounded cheerful music made by drums and trumpets. The boats reached the shore, and the princes and princesses entered, where they danced the night away. The soldier danced unseen among them. But if one of the princesses held up a cup of wine, he drank it, and then it was empty when she brought it to her mouth. The youngest sister was alarmed by this, but the eldest always told her to be quiet. It's a bit cheeky on the soldier's part, but I guess since these people wanted to, slip him the Mickey and then, make sure he got his head chopped off later. That's a pretty minor bit of revenge on his part. They danced until 3 a.m, by which time their shoes were all worn out and they had to stop. You kind of get the image of, the girls coming home from the club holding their heels. We've all been there. That's why you bring those little soft shoes in your bag, the ones that roll up and you can slip them on. They're very handy. The princes rowed them back across the water, although this time the soldier sat in front next to the oldest sister. I guess he was trying to be a good wingman to the boatman for the youngest sister because he'd complained about the boat being heavy, so this time he can be like, oh yeah, the boat's super light now. I don't know what I was thinking before, and maybe the prince will get his goodnight kiss. At the far shore, the sisters took leave of their princes and promised to come back the next night. When the 12 reached the stairs, the soldier ran ahead and quickly laid down in his bed. When the sisters slowly stumbled up into the room, he was snoring loudly. "We're safe from that one," the sisters said. Then they took off their beautiful clothes, put them away, tossed their worn-out shoes under their beds, and laid down. The next morning, the soldier decided to keep quiet because he wanted to see these wonders again. He went down with them on the second and third nights, and everything was as it had been the first time. Each time, the 12 sisters danced their shoes to bits. On the last night, the soldier took a cup from the ball to bring back his proof. And so the hour came when the soldier had to answer for himself. He took the 3 twigs and the cup with him and went before the king. The 12 stood behind the door to hear what he would say. I could just kind of imagine these 12 teenagers and young ladies just like, oh man, are we busted? Are we busted this time? The king asked, "Where did my 12 daughters wear out their shoes last night?" And the soldier replied, "With 12 princes in an underground castle." Then he told the king all he had seen and brought out the sparkling leaves and the golden cup as tokens of his tale. Then the king called in his daughters and asked them if the soldier had spoken truly. They saw that they had been found out and that denial wouldn't help them, so they confessed all. This is excellent advice to teenagers. If you mess up and you're going to get grounded, then the last thing you want to do is make it worse by not coming clean. If you're going to get grounded, just get grounded and deal with it. Don't add lies on top because you'll just be more grounded. Then the king asked the soldier which of the 12 he would have as his wife. The soldier replied, "I am no longer young, so I will take the oldest." The wedding was held that very day, and the soldier was declared to be the king's heir and successor. So you can see how this common, ordinary soldier, he wasn't an officer, he wasn't anyone important, he's just this normal guy, probably, with an injured leg or injured arm, someone that you would completely write off, but he's now going to be king through his own wits and his own endeavor and his own work. And this would have been a story that really appealed to common, ordinary people. We all like an underdog, and we all like to see someone who's down and out on their luck end up on top. But the princes from the underground kingdom were cursed for the same number of days as the number of nights that they had danced with the 12 sisters. So that's the story of the worn-out shoes, also known as the 12 dancing princesses. And what I'm curious to hear from you is, whose side are you on? Are you rooting for the sisters to be able to keep sneaking out of the castle and having fun? Are you rooting for the soldier? Are you curious at all about who these 12 underground princes are? Who are they? Are they some type of fairy? Are they humans who have been somehow cursed into an underground kingdom? The story isn't at all clear about what the nature of these princes is. So I would like to know what you think about who the mysterious princes are and if you think they got what they deserved, because it kind of harkens back, at least to me, to all the stories about some guy showing up to take a girl out for the night and the dad's sitting there on the front porch in the rocker going, "You better have my daughter home by midnight or else I got a shovel and the woods are just over there," that kind of thing. So did these princes get what was coming to them because they were helping the girls sneak out and give their dad the runaround? But Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one. That's a story that I read over and over when I was a child, and I thought about how fun it would be to just have all these wonderful dresses and sneak out and have a good time. And let me know if you ever imagined that too. Thanks for listening.